think that especially in this time, like people are like, oh, you gotta hustle, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Listen, Beyonce was not built in a day, and even if she was, a team built Beyonce in a day. It's impossible. We don't have the same resources that other people have at this moment, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that since I was able to focus on one particular thing, which is my podcast, I was able to create an amazing coloring book that's in multiple stores. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like sometimes you gotta look at the bigger picture and see like what's the end goal here. Because once PhD is a household name, I can come back and sell some lashes on the PhD.
You're listening to the Black to Business Podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Minnie T. Marshall. Do you ever feel like you're just doing too much, or too much all at once at least? I'm sure we've all been guilty of having this shiny object syndrome, which is where you focus all of your attention on something new, current, or trendy, yet you drop this as soon as something new takes its place. That is not good, especially when it comes to business. I mean, I get it as a creative and visionary myself, dealing with idea overload, which eventually leads to burnout and stress because you're trying to push yourself to do too many things and not getting anything done right. I'm sure you know that life would be so much easier if you just simplify, but easier said than done, right? And we get that too. So knowing that this is something that most entrepreneurs struggle with, we thought that it would be important to discuss why focusing on one thing in your business matters. There are several benefits, and our guest today is going to share some of those benefits and her own success story of narrowing down her focus to just one thing in her business. Joining us today on the show is Eboné Almon, the founder of the Professional Homegirl platform, a platform for women created to promote balance between personal and professional development while becoming the best version of herself. In addition to the Professional Homegirl platform, Eboné is also the host of the PhD podcast, providing a safe space for women to share their stories anonymously and drop gems on the multitude of life's lessons that they've learned through life's growing pains. In this conversation, we're diving into tips on growing your brand by focusing on one thing, the power of repurposing, and how to know when it's the right time to introduce something new into your business. Eboné is also going to share her own story of having to make the tough decision to let go of a profitable business to focus on one goal and one business. This is a real conversation, y'all, so you're definitely going to enjoy it. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by NY Beauty Suites, a shared rental and retail space designed specifically for beautypreneurs and wellness professionals. Founded by Joanne Briere, NY Beauty Suites is the first private workspace option for state-licensed and insured beauty and wellness professionals in New York City with 2 premier Brooklyn locations. The shared flexible workspace features services like hair, makeup, facials, braiding, waxing, etc. In addition to these services, NY Beauty Suite offers suites ranging in size from 96 to 500 square feet for rent by the hour, daily, or monthly. Each rental includes professional cleaning, sanitation procedures, utilities, Wi-Fi, and 24-hour access to a secure building. Also, if you're a content creator, it's the perfect space to ensure you have everything you need to create jaw-dropping content with their all-inclusive photography and podcast studio. Visit nybeautysuites.com to learn more about NY Beauty Suites and how you can make it your home for working and innovating. So Eboné, welcome to the Black to Business Podcast. I am really excited about today's conversation. Today is extra special, so thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Monique. Thank you. I'm super excited.
Of course. Yes. So today is, we're talking about all the things, why focusing on one thing in business matters. But I first want to get people who are not yet familiar with you, if you could just share a little bit about your story. How did you get where you are today, and what is it that you do in your business?
Oh, child, this is going to be a good one, a long one too, but I'll try to sum it up. So my name is Eboné. I am the founder and host of the PhD, which is an acronym for Professional Homegirl podcast, where I interview women of color from different walks of life, and all of my guests are anonymous. And the Professional Homegirl podcast was created as a safe space that I saw that wasn't around for women to be open to and to speak freely about things that were going on within our community, or which either related to personal or professional development. And for me, I wanted to create this platform because a couple of years ago, I lost my grandmother and I was battling some really serious mental health issues. And as you know, mental health a couple of years ago was not as attractive as it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to create a space where women can just like be themselves and just share gems and be real. And here we are today with the podcast.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So you and I have talked a lot about, your journey, and I thought it was great to get you on a podcast because you've been able to, shift and grow with different areas of your business pretty quickly. And I think that
Thank
it's a
you.
Conversation you're welcome, worth having. I'm like, oh no, she has to get the show.
So, it wasn't easy, child.
I know. And that's what I want to talk about. Because one of the things you and I talked about is, the importance of you being able to focus on one thing and just being able to grow your brand with that one thing. And I think that's a thing that people need to hear more of. So you initially started with a podcast. So let's talk about focusing on one thing before branching out. How were you able to do this? Because you offer different things in the Professional Homegirl. So how were you able to do this and focus on one thing?
Well, at first, the podcast was a blog.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started out, I was like, I want to create a blog. I can interview women, all this good stuff. But a lot of people don't know how to read. And I live in New York City. So we need to have something that's like really quick, something that people can be able to have access to that's not going to require much. So once I realized, and also I don't really care to write, which is so funny because I can write, but I don't like to write, which is like a weird thing. But anywho, so once I realized I wanted to make that transition, somebody told me oh, you should do a podcast. And I'm like, oh, what's a podcast? And this was this was 3 years ago. And so when I started the podcast, I started to want to speak to different women and really hone in on that one particular thing. Cause I'm like, you know what, maybe this can be something because I see what podcast is growing into and I saw what it was doing for other people. And I just went for it. And I started doing my research. I started studying different blueprints of podcasting. I read so many books on podcasts because I really wanted to understand how I can make this work for myself, but also make something that's cool and something that I was proud of and something that would get people attention,
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the fact that you started with the blog and then you shifted over to podcast. So let's talk about that shift because, of course, it's something that's new. And you mentioned that you didn't like to write, but you knew how to write. So how was that transition for you in shifting?
I have the can-do attitude. So I think at first with anything that would anybody do, or maybe just me, I was a little nervous because I didn't know anything about podcasting. And also I'm from the South like you, and then you got we have a mixture of this up north accent or verbiage, whatever. So certain words would sound kind of weird. So I didn't like how I sound. And then you just want to be comfortable. So I think with that shift, especially in the very beginning, when you listen to episode 1 compared to where I'm at now, you definitely hear more confidence. And you definitely hear me knowing more I feel more sure about what I'm doing. Because in the beginning, I feel I didn't know where to start. I was just doing something. And I think that I was taking it serious because I feel everything that I do, I always try to make it I always think of the bigger picture.
Right.
And I was reading something because I love to read, and I was reading Will Smith's book, which is amazing. And he was sharing a story about how his dad was fussing at them because he was making Will and his older brother, when they was kids at the time, build a brick wall. And he was saying that the issue is y'all keep looking at it as a brick wall instead of looking at it as you laying it brick by brick. So that's kind of how I looked at podcasts and you know what, it may not be perfect in the beginning, but if I just keep laying it brick by brick, I'm going to get to that wall.
Oh my God, that is so amazing.
It was amazing, girl.
That's the foundation. And that's what I always try to talk about is, every day, lay a brick every day. And it's that foundation. And something that you mentioned, Eboné, I can totally relate to is, like you said, we're from the South. And I just spoke about this on my 2021 review episode, but the same thing. It was like I was not comfortable with how I spoke
I heard
at
that
first.
episode too.
Yeah, and it's such a thing, and just to hear you say that, and then how you got over those fears. So, thank you for sharing that. And so, how did you know that you were having the right business model and that you were on the right track?
You know what's so funny? I think that I knew what I was doing. I knew that I was walking in my purpose when people started reaching out to me as far as like wanting to share their story on the show, or they reach out to me and say, because of this episode, I feel seen. Because a lot of episodes on my podcast is not like, I mean, there are some like fun episodes, but a lot of episodes are like really deep and can be triggering. But you know, I do believe that we need to share these stories so other people before us don't have to, it's before, right? Before us,
yes.
Don't have to go through the things that we went through, because I feel like one of my favorite lyrics from Jay-Z is, Hov went through that, so you don't have to go through that. So, yeah, right? So I feel like that's how I knew that I was doing something right. Like, and granted, like I'm a one-woman show, so I do everything by myself, but like, I think that when you start, and it also depends on what your results is, like what the success means to you. So one of my factors of success is, okay, somebody emailed me and said that I made their day. You know what I'm saying? Or like somebody emailed me and say that they wanted to see another day. So I think that once I started receiving that type of outpour of like support and love, that's when I knew like, okay, I got something going on here. Let me take this like serious and like really make something out of this.
I love it. Yes. Eboné is always with the lyrics and the music. Just follow her on Instagram. She stay with some lyrics and music.
I stay with a quote, baby.
You do, and I love it.
That's that down south in us.
And I literally was in conversation with someone the other day, and they went in for like a hug. I mean, they went in for a handshake, and the person hugged them, and I was like, reach for the handshake, got a hug. It was like a lyric from this artist that I won't give credit to right now, but that's the first thing that came to mind. But that's so funny.
A lyric, a saying, a slogan, something.
Something. I love it. So we talked about, your growth, and like you mentioned, your one-woman show, but what you have been able to do as a one-woman show is so amazing. And
thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I'm like, Eboné, you are powerful and you are doing it. And you talked about, so let's talk about growth. So in what ways has focusing on, one thing allowed your business and your vision to grow?
Oh, child. When I started the podcast, like I'm a creative. Like I'm a creative at heart. I love creating. Like that creating makes me so happy. Like I love to see things that God placed in my mind, and when I bring it to life, like it just, I can't even describe the feeling. Like it really gets me going. So aside from the podcast, I had like a beauty company that I was trying to work on too. It's like an eyelash company, and like anything I do, I take my time. So you're gonna always get the best when it comes from me, right?
Right.
Because I only want the best. So I give you what I want.
Right.
And my lashes are beautiful, like amazing. Like I think Ashanti had them on. I had like Robin Gibbons in them and somebody else. But like, yeah, like I was really doing my thing. But to me, that's when it became intricate for me to realize, like, you know what, Eboné, something gonna have to give, because you only got one source of income. You got bills, you got yourself, and you got two businesses. And not to say that you couldn't do both at the same time, but it's just going to require a lot of work. And who's to say that since you dividing your attention up into two different businesses, who's to say that they both going to pop off?
Right.
Something going to have to give. So I always tell people, here goes another little slogan.
Okay.
Always go with the idea that takes the least amount of money that's going to make you the most amount of money. And granted, my lashes at the time were making me more money, but I'm not a beauty girl. Like, I just love lashes. I'm just a girly girl. I don't want to make no videos showing people how to put lashes on this. Like, that's just not my thing. But when it comes to podcasting, I can give you a good story. I can, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can give you a good coloring book. Like, I can give you some cute merch. I can give you enough for you to want to buy into me and what I'm doing.
Right.
And that's what's important to me. So I think that especially in this time, like people like, oh, you gotta hustle, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Listen, Beyonce was not built in a day, and even if she was, a team built Beyonce in a day. It's impossible. We don't have the same resources that other people have at this moment, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact that since I was able to focus on one particular thing, which is my podcast, I was able to create an amazing coloring book that's in multiple stores. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like sometimes you gotta look at the bigger picture and see like what's the end goal here. Because once PhD is a household name, I can come back and sell some lashes on the PhD.
That's smart. I love it. Okay, so you also launched, you mentioned the coloring book, and I know we've talked about, you've been able to get in some pretty amazing locations. So let's talk about the process of the coloring book, how that came about, and also how you were able to get some of these amazing partnerships.
Yeah, so I recently launched my coloring book called the Professional Homegirl Coloring Book, which I'm like super obsessed with because it's super cute and it's super dope. Like it's so fire. So we've been in this pandemic for like 1,000 years, right? And it feels like it, child.
Yes.
Going crazy. But anywho, so I was trying to think to myself, like, what are some things that like people are doing to keep themselves sane, right? And one of the things when I was doing my research, I'm like, oh, people like coloring books. Like people love to color. And I remember that I used to love to color when I was a young girl. And it's even like a little bit here and there, I used to like to color, whatever. So I went to these different bookstores, whatever, like because I love to read. I read a lot. So going to bookstores like nothing to me. So I was going to these different bookstores and I was just like, doing market research on like what do coloring books look like? Like what are people like using? Like what are people like coloring? Like I need to see these coloring books to see like if I can create something similar. But when I was doing the research, I'm like, yo, these coloring books look mad boring. Like if it ain't geometric shapes, if it ain't flowers, if it ain't a black girl with different hairstyles, I'm just like, give me some variety. Like coloring cannot be this boring.
Right.
So then it hit me. I'm like, oh, I can make a coloring book, and I think that'd be so dope. And then like, the inner kid in me, the little Eboné would just be so proud because like it's a coloring book, it's fire. But then I'm always trying to think of ways to like how to stand out, like because at the end of the day, the bigger picture is PhD. So a coloring book is dope. But I wanted to like bring it back home so people can be like, oh, okay, this was created to go along with a podcast, which I later came up with the whole QR code. So when you're coloring in a coloring book, when you scan a QR code, it takes you to the page of the story that you're listening to or the page that you're coloring, and you get to hear the story that goes with the page. And I'm like, that's how you're going to stand out. I ain't never seen nobody do this before. Right. And I'm like, it's just so freaking dope. Like, and it's a new way to be introduced to these stories that people never heard of. So I was like excited. So got the books done. Amazing. I was obsessed with them. So I'm like, okay, I know I'm selling them. My listeners are supporting them. My family and friends are supporting them. I'm like, I need to get this in front of people who don't know me because that's where the real customer is at. And I was just going to different bookstores. I would wake up early in the morning, take some coloring books with me, and I would go to different bookstores and introduce myself, speak to the manager, explain to them about the podcast. I let them keep the book. And that's how I was able to get these partnerships.
So let's do a timeline. So when did you start the coloring books?
The coloring books, when did it come out?
Yeah, when they come out.
So the coloring books came out at the end of July, beginning of August.
Of 2021?
Yes, 2021.
Okay. And then when were you in because how many stores are you in now?
We are in 4 stores. Are we in 4? I think we're in 4, yeah. 4 stores. Oh. And I was able to get the coloring book in 4 stores by the end of the year. So I was hustling.
You were hustling. And that is what I wanted to say. Like you were hustling. Because when you told me, I was like, wait. You were saying you did this like, well, we're in 2022 now. But I'm like, 2021, you did all of this in the middle of panorama, whatever we're going through. And I was like,
yeah, you were so shocked. You was like, wait, what?
I was like, oh my God, like this is brilliant. And I think that's a thing to be said because one, one of the things that I want to really drive home is the fact that you focus on, you got drilled in on one thing, and then you were able to repurpose this content in your business. And I think that's so amazing. Any advice or tips for others who are looking to do the same? You're welcome.
Well, I think that what stands out the most is just that human interaction. I think that since we are in the pandemic, everything is so computerized. Like, I need my computer, but I am tired of looking at my computer. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the fact that since I was able to, like, put myself together real nicely, I had my business cards, I had these coloring books. I think it's important to have whatever product that you're trying to sell to your to the business, to have it right there so they can actually see it and feel it and be able to experience. And, just a simple introduction. I mean, a lot of times nobody's really busy like that. So people got a little bit more time on their hand than they had before. And just going to introduce myself, and I gave them a book and just told them what the platform was really about and why I feel like my book should be in their store. And I think that by experiencing the book for themselves and seeing that this coloring book combines art and technology, it's kind of like you can't turn it down because it's dope.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so you mentioned...
I was going to say, and the images in the coloring book are like, I haven't seen anything like this. And I go to bookstores all the time. So I think that when you create a product and it stands out and it's original, like it has like your character to it. Like it has like, it gotta be different. Like, it gotta be something that people are going to engage in, because I think another reason why I think that PXG has been, I guess, quote unquote successful, because there's not a platform like it.
Yeah.
Certainly. So I think that people, right, and I think that anybody can have a podcast, anybody can do anything, but I think what's going to stand out most is like, what is your content about? Or like, what is your branding like? Or like, what are you about? Like, really think outside the box, because I always think like, it's a million rappers out there and they all getting money. But how do certain people that you're trying to emulate, how do they stand out?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And one of the things you mentioned is the images. So I wanted to talk about, because you also mentioned the QR code. So what is the images for people who are trying to envision what the coloring book looks like? How are the images in the coloring book?
Oh my God. So the images, as you can tell, I'm like so in love with this coloring book. I have it like right in front of me. So as you know, I interview women of color, and the images in the coloring book is just, I think that I love it so much, and just hearing everybody else's reactions is because it reminds you of because most of the women I interview are Black women. So growing up, this is what Black women look like to me.
Right.
You get it in a coloring book, and I feel like within the images, like, and it's an adult coloring book, so there is a page that, because we support sex workers, and most sex workers are Black women. So it's just like, women of color. And it's just like, when you look at these images, like, especially me being from the South, like, I remember seeing women pose with money in their hand, and there's an image like this. Like, certain things, or like, my best friend mom is the highest ranked firefighter in Chicago. So there's an image of her. Like, these images are like really near and dear to me, because it's like, this is what I saw what Black women look like. Like it just doesn't get no better than this. Like, or even like with the quotes and the games, like manifestations, or like even like with the sticky notes. Like, there's a picture with sticky notes saying that I love my body. Like, who don't put sticky notes on their dresser or in their bathroom to remind themselves that self-love is key and it's important and it's necessary, or like it's just so amazing. Like I just sometimes when I create the coloring book, and just to see where it's at now, and just like I guess sometimes I just get so emotional, because I'm just like, wow, like you're really creating something that's in people's homes and people like really love, like, and it's really like, it's changing people, because coloring is therapeutic. But not only is it therapeutic with this coloring book, you get to hear these stories that's inspiring.
Yeah. And I love the representation because we are all multifaceted. We are all different.
Yes.
And people, I think that a lot of times people feel, like you said before, that people feel seen. And a lot of times they're like, when they look at something, they're like, oh, that's not for me. It doesn't represent me. But what you're doing, it represents a lot of women. So I think that that is something, like you said, you have the woman who's dancing or the woman who's a firefighter. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, or even there's a page where a woman is reading to her daughter. That's something my grandma used to do to me or do with me. So it's just like, if you would see yourself in this coloring book on at least one of these pages, or you would see somebody that you know in one of these pages, and that was the goal.
And then, so the coloring book also has a QR code to the stories related to these pages. So, because I know that you mentioned they're anonymous, the stories are anonymous. So, how does that work?
What, the QR code?
Yeah. So it's to an actual person's story if they're anonymous or if it's someone that looks like them.
No, so in the coloring book with the images has they don't really have like face details or anything. It's like a regular image of like a person's face, but it doesn't have like the eyes and stuff. Because I always want people to see themselves in everything that I do, right? Hence why my guests are anonymous. So when you go to a particular page, you have the top 3 episodes that goes within that category of the page that you're coloring. And the first one, when you scan the QR code, it takes you to the first story that goes with the actual page that you're coloring.
Okay, I love it. I love it. By the way, I have to get my hands on a copy of the book. I already said I'm getting one.
I gotta give you one. Yes.
I'm gonna purchase one because I have been like, oh my God, I love it. And just like meeting you and, you know, knowing what you are about. And I think that, guys, even the podcast is amazing. And some of the stories, I'm like, oh my God, I call Eboné. I'm like, wait, why did you have to do a topic of this? Because now I want to listen to this, and it's got me not
I know
trusting
she was
people.
texting me. She's like, wait, what happened with this one? I was like, girl.
I love it. I love it. So, okay. So you mentioned the fact that you were focusing on this one thing and you also had the lash company. Now, I know in this day and age, like you said, being on the computer, being on social media, a lot of people deal with the shiny object syndrome. So any advice for dealing with for people who are listening to deal with the shiny object syndrome or dealing with FOMO, fear of missing out on something?
Listen, I had this syndrome where I felt like I just had to. I don't think it's not that I felt like I was missing out on something, but like we're young, like we're trying to be out and have a good time. But I think that once you know what your purpose is, it's going to take sacrifice. Like regardless, anything that you do, it's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take blood, sweat, and tears, and you're going to have to sacrifice. That's just the name of the game. So I think that if you're able to sacrifice for a couple of months or maybe a few years, the rest is history. Like even to this point, like people think that I'm doing good, but I sacrifice so much and I'm very thankful, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be. But I know that in order for me to get to where I want to be at in life, I have to keep sacrificing and I have to be disciplined enough to believe that it's going to pay off.
Yes.
It's going to pay off. And I read so much and I read a lot of like autobiographies and memoirs and stuff like that because I always feel like somebody's somebody's storyline can be somebody else's lifeline. And everybody that I look up to or every book that I read, it took them a minimum 10 years to really get to a point where they can just be free.
Yeah.
And whatever freedom looks like to you, but it took at least 10 years is what people call microwave success. You get what I'm saying? So it's just like, how bad do you really want it? Like, I was just complaining to my best friend the other day, and I was like, damn, all I do is like, I don't feel like I have a life because I really do eat, breathe, and what's the other one? Cry or sleep? Like, it's eat, breathe, and sleep. Like, everything I do is PhD because I believe in it so much. And I'm just like, all the things that I did by myself. So if I can imagine what it would be like once I get my help and my support and the resources, like it's over.
Unstoppable. Continue to be unstoppable. Yes.
What?
And I've felt it.
Yes, like you gotta believe, and I think that when you believe, nothing's gonna come your way or your dream, your passion, but you gotta put some work behind it. You got to.
And I think it's also a matter of, like you said, it takes people years to accomplish things. And I think that also people have to realize that their journey is their own. And you really have to have blinders on when you're going after something,
You
because
do.
you cannot get distracted. Like, you were
You
able to
can't.
make a hard decision and say, I'm going to let this go. It was making me money, but the purpose right now is so much bigger. And then your game plan was like, eventually I could possibly bring that back.
And not for nothing, like I can't change nobody's lives with no lashes.
Listen, some
I can
people
help you
have no
look
life.
good, but girl, I can't change your life. I can change your life with the stories now.
I love it. No shade to
But
the last girl.
lashes, and no shade, no
Yeah.
shade. Listen, I think that any avenue that you do that you are passionate about, you go
Yeah.
for it. Lashes, I'm a girly girl. I like looking good. But that's not who I am. But when it comes to PhD
Yeah.
and the stuff that my dreams and what I know, like things I'm working on and all this other stuff, like I know I'm going to inspire somebody not to give up with these stories.
Yes. I love it.
It inspires me not to give up.
It's true. And it's so true. I love it. And one of the things you also mentioned is we talked about before, like you were able to introduce the coloring book from the podcast and just repurposing your content. I want to talk about more the process of branching out and growing. So the process of branching out into additional resources for your business, how did you know you were ready to introduce something new and that you can manage because you're a one woman show?
I don't know if I knew that I don't know I don't know when I realized that it was time for me to like do the coloring book. I knew that because it's been like 2.5 years going on. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's been 2.5 years before I introduced the coloring book, and I had like merch and other things that I was doing, but who don't have merch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, I just needed. I guess I was just thinking. I'm always thinking of like different ways of doing things and gaining revenue because you need money to grow.
Right.
And I guess I realized that I just needed that one product that was just so cool or just something that was different that could help me get to other people, because
Mm-hmm.
coloring doesn't have a race, a age, a shape or anything. Anybody can color. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's just the mindset that I always had. Like I just needed that one product, and the coloring book just took on a life on its own.
Okay. And then also, you've mentioned, you read a lot. And I also want to talk about, for those who are listening, what are some of the personality or leadership traits, if any, do you feel that have contributed to your success, your growth at where you are now?
Listen, I think I told you this. It's not about who's the smartest, it's about who gets it
Mm-hmm.
done. And I think that one of the main leadership qualities that I have, and I think that a lot of other people have, is one, they didn't quit, and two, you got to be consistent. I think I'm telling y'all, being consistent would take you far. I drop this podcast, every episode come out every Tuesday, and if that episode doesn't come out, you best believe I am over communicating with my listeners. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
something came up. Hey, it's coming out this day, whatever case may be. But like for the past 3 years, an episode has always came out midnight on Tuesday. And I think that by me being so consistent has taken me so far. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the most organized. But if you're consistent, the rest is history. That's how
That's a
I
gem.
feel.
I agree. A gem. That's a gem. So let's talk about the balancing and the management. So you mentioned you're a one-woman show and you also work full-time. How do you prioritize your
Ooh,
time
child.
and tasks to meet these deadlines and these goals in your business?
I think that for me, like I make a to-do list every week. And sometimes that to-do list is like front and back. So I just try to, as long as I'm getting my 8 hours of sleep, because I need my 8 hours, child.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely, girl, like I need my sleep because we do a lot.
Yeah.
But for me, I think that by making my to-do list organizing or prioritizing like what's important to like what can be done later on is what helps me like keep everything balanced, because I do a lot, but I think that because I am good at time management, which is another key leadership skill that I think a lot of people should have. If you're good at time management, you can get so much done and not feel tired. And I'm not saying that every day I'm like, oh my God, I feel great this and that, because every now and then I have my moments where I'm like, you know what, today I'm not doing nothing, because I do believe that you need to rest. I don't believe in the grind culture. I don't believe in going hard. Like, you need your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since we're in this pandemic, because I can't even tell you what today is. So it's just like, you need days where you can have to yourself. But I think that once you make a list and you can actually see, because you know what they say, I read something where it said that if you visualize and you can actually see you getting things done, that helps you be more productive.
It's true.
And I'm a visual person.
Yes. And Eboné, what do you see the professional homegirl like in the future? What are your, your plans and your vision?
Oh, child, I just see PhD just let me be free.
Yes.
I don't know. I overall, the professional homegirl will be a household name. Mm-hmm. Like, I really do believe it. I think that she would be in all aspects of business. She would be in technology. I mean, she's already in technology, but there will be an app. There will be festivals. Like, I really want to do a lot for community service. Like, I'm working on different projects for that. Like, professional homegirl will be known, and it will especially be known amongst Black and brown girls.
Amazing. So we have covered a lot, and also I think people are really inspired by, one, you've been able to do this and create this success, being yourself, and then serving a need, unheard people, feeling like they're seen. But then also you're doing it as a one-woman show, and then you also have that vision of building a team. Do you have any favorite tools or resources that you've used along your journey that will be helpful for those who are listening?
And you know what, Monique, you just mentioned something, and I think this is very important that you said it. Being yourself. I think also by being yourself would take you so far. I am so thankful that I don't have to change my voice. And I'm not saying, because there is a time and a place for you to have certain conversations, but throughout those different conversations, I am always me. I don't have to like change how I look, change my appearance. Like, I am me 100%, and you're going to always get me. So I think that when you are you, there's only one you. And I think people should really hone in on that. Like, I don't think that you should alter how you are. Like, you should go places where you are celebrated and not tolerated. And I think that by you being you, that will take you so much farther than you can ever expect. I would never have imagined that people will want to listen to me, a girl from the South, country and all.
Country and all.
Country and all. I can't say certain words because my accent is fighting with my New York accent. So it's just like, but people love those little things about me. So if that's one thing I want people to take away from our conversation, is just be yourself. Also, some tools and resources that I use. So I definitely use Google. I think a lot of people be sleeping on Google.
Yes.
What else do I use? I mean, you know what? I know I keep saying this, but I really read a lot. I don't think there's not a book out there that can give you what you need. So if it's anything that I tell people, especially in the field that you're in, like for me with podcasting, I have at least like several books on podcasting or several ebooks on podcasting to really help me master my craft and make me feel comfortable and confident and being able to talk more about how I created this show. So I think that, and also I think that you have to see what other people are doing, like, and don't be afraid to ask people. I think networking was also a really great resource for me, because if I saw somebody doing a show or something, oh, you have a podcast? Ask them questions, this and that. Like, sometimes the answer you need is within the person right next to you.
Yes. Eboné, you dropping all these little quotes. We're not gonna have room.
Oh, child. I ain't calling the hood Oprah for nothing, child.
Not the hood Oprah.
Just out here doing the Lord's work, girl.
am loving it. And I will say, when you were saying earlier, being yourself, and I think that even when we first met, it was just like we clicked because we just
click.
like, it was, I don't know if it was a Southern, but we were just like genuinely ourselves, but you are genuinely yourself. And I think that also plays a role into, again, your success. Like you said, you show up as you. And then another thing, like I was talking about earlier, is how we speak and things like that. I'm like, I am not chirping on these colonized tongues. Listen, so we speak how we speak. You still get the message.
Yeah, speak how we speak.
Yeah.
Listen, there's a time and place for everything, but I'm telling y'all, and people like when you're yourself. Like, people know when you're being fake. Like, when I was talking to this girl and she had this voice on, I said, girl, I know it's not how you talk. And she's like, girl. I said, girl, just be yourself. Like, I am not one of those girls.
I know you did say that. I know you said it.
You know I did. I said, girl, bring that pitch down, because I know that's not your real voice. Stop it. And it's sad because there's so many people, especially when it comes to Black and brown people, where they feel like they're just not enough, and you are enough. And if people feel like you're not enough, then those are not your people.
Exactly. Eboné, this has been such a treat. I want to ask, if people wanted to work with you, how could they do so? And how could they help you? How could they support you?
Well, since you ask,
yes.
You can't grow anything if you don't have monetary support.
Yes.
So please, because I really do believe in PhD, and I think by the time you get to this point of the conversation, I hope that I have made you a believer as well, because I feel like we need platforms, especially within our community, to help people and to give people inspiration and to make people feel seen, because people have went through so many hardships, and a lot of people are where they at because they didn't have a safe space to go to. So in order to support the Professional Homegirl, you can support us through Patreon, patreon.com/the PhD podcast. You can support us through buymeacoffee.com/the PhD podcast, or you can just simply go to the PhDpodcast.com, buy a coloring book, which I know you will really love, or reach out to me if you want to do like a partnership or collaboration. And if you are not able to support with monetary value, which I completely understand because it is hard out here, I think that just by sharing the stories would just be quite enough, because I think that these stories are amazing. I am inspired by these stories. When I'm having a bad day, I listen to a few of these stories. So sharing these stories to your homegirls, to your friends, your loved ones would really make me happy.
Love it. So amazing. And Eboné, what does it? You're welcome. And what does it mean to you to be Black in business?
I think what it means to me to be Black in business is to just be free. Ownership is so important, especially when you are a Black and brown person. And I think that ownership has been discussed so many times throughout the history of Black people. And I'm trying to remember this. I'm drawing a blank, but I used to listen to Malcolm X speeches a lot. And he would talk about the importance of ownership. So you don't have to be an entrepreneur, because, I know entrepreneurship is really popular, but it is not easy. But I do believe that if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, support those that do, because it's a lot of work, but we got to keep this dollar within our community, because there is a lot of dope people that have really amazing businesses, but people are not supporting them. So to be Black and to be in business, just ownership and freedom and just representation. Like, I can't tell you how many times people came up to me and was like, wow, like, you have a coloring book or you have a podcast, like, that really means something to, like, especially young kids. Or even what you know, Monique, like, entrepreneurship, you interview all these different people, like, that really matters. So that's what it means to me, like, it's just being supportive.
Yes, thank you. I love it. And Eboné, where can people go to find you and connect with you, as far as like on social media and different places?
Yes, you can follow me at hello. I'm about to get the email address. You can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at the PhD Podcast. And if you go on my personal page, it's the Professional Homegirl. And if you have a story or you know somebody that have a story, please email me at hello@thephcpodcast.com.
Amazing. And Eboné, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been lovely. I'm so grateful for you taking the time and just being connected with you. Like I said, we hit it off when we first met. And the amazing thing is after we finish recording, we're talking again.
I know we are.
We're speaking again tonight. So, yeah, it's just been a pleasure. And I really appreciate you for being here.
No, thank you so much, Moni. Like you said, when we first spoke the first time, we really hit it off, and you are just such a gem, and I really love what you're doing because I love entrepreneurship. So I just want to say kudos to you and thank you so much for having me on your platform.
Such a fun and real conversation. The overarching message was to have one big goal and go all in. Have one thing in your business you focus on and go all in. Have one business idea and go all in, especially when you're working with a small team of 1 or 1 to 3 people. Go all in on that idea. And once you've mastered and reached that goal that you set, you can take on something else. I also love how Eboné shared how she's been able to take one thing in her business and repurpose it to create new offers. The true definition of working smarter and not harder. Y'all, this is amazing, so be sure to support Eboné by checking out the Professional Homegirl podcast, and you can also purchase one of her coloring books. I've already made my purchase, so I am so excited to receive it. You can find all the resources mentioned in today's show by visiting blacktobusiness.com/86. Thanks for listening, and be sure to support us by sharing this episode with a friend. Chat with you next week.